The 80s had the General. The 90s had John Gilligan. In the noughties, it was the reign of Martin Marlowe Hyland. His was a familiar path with success and power, and then the recklessness. He had to go, because with him, an innocent young man doing an honest day's work died. Crime World presents Caught in the Crossfire, the unsolved murders of coke kingpin Marlowe Hyland and innocent Anthony Campbell. Available now on all podcast platforms. Okay, firstly, I can't believe I didn't get a ticket.
Yes. Very lucky. You should have been.
I was here in a 1 hour parking zone, for, how long did that go on? I got into court at 10 o'clock and it's now 1:15 and no parking warden got me.
Particularly if maybe it's seen that southern number plate. But I suppose you might get away with it because they think you're a visitor.
Well, I put this in the window.
They treat us locals.
Hoping to late riser.
So that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
They think you're a visitor and they're giving you a bit of leeway.
Maybe. Anyway, thank you to the parking wardens of Derry. Yeah, that was an incredible amount of information about this case. Sentence hearing for Hayley Robb, Jill Robinson and Rose de Montmorency Wright. We think we have that pronounced correctly. The first thing that struck me was the ordinariness of them. And in particular, I thought they just stood there. They look as if they're just taking their... they've pleaded guilty, obviously, in this. They look as if they're taking their punishment, in a...
Well, you certainly got that impression from the defence argument, are that these three women have led blameless lives. They're all clear records. I think one of them had a minor motoring offence, but apart from that, the clear record from good upbringing, and that they were all drawn onto this horrific situation by the control that Creswell had over all three. The court went into detail about the relationships that he had with these three women, and it was described as manipulative, coercive, violent, and the impression, obviously the argument that the defence are putting forward that these women were afraid of Creswell, and they were
coercively controlled was brought. In actual fact, it was the judge who kind of made the first remarks along that when he asked the counsel for the state, are you presenting this as coercive control? Didn't he? He sort of...
Yeah.
And the state said not quite, but that it would have to be factored in.
Definitely, and I think that's a basis of their argument. It was clear that the three barristers for the individual defendants focused in on their relationship with Creswell and the control that he had over them, and that they committed these crimes because they were frightened of him. But they also stressed it, I think, in all three cases, that they weren't of the belief that he had been involved in Katie's murder at that stage. They believed that they were covering up an assault.
That was going to look bad for him and they also believed she'd committed suicide. Yeah. So they believed that assault would look bad for him, basically, and would sort of damage his reputation as such. I
think one of the times it would impact badly on Johnny was one of the terms used, because they knew if evidence that he had told them that he had attacked Katie the night before she died, that clearly would not look good in a subsequent police investigation. So all the barristers were keen to stress that, their behaviour was in terms of belief of him having assaulted her, as opposed to there was no mention, they argue, that they knew he had murdered her.
So what happened basically was she had been she'd sort of started this relationship. He was named Shane McCluskey. And she had sort of told him, Katie Simpson had told him that, she was a bit worried about Creswell finding out about it. She had deleted messages from her phone. And the night before her death, she had gone out with her new partner. And the following day, he became anxious about her, didn't he? He started ringing looking to know where she was. And of course, it was Creswell had discovered, somebody had told him at a yard that she had been out with this guy the night before. He seemed to have got into this ferocious jealous rage.
He had actually been seen, the person that told Creswell told him that she and McCluskey had been seen leaving Katie's mother's house the following morning, which was, as you say, was the basis of Creswell's rage at finding out that news. And he had such a control over Katie that the fact that she was looked to be in a new relationship was what drove him into this rage.
From what we heard today at the sentence hearing, because we're still piecing together exactly what happened over the course of the few days, but he appears to put her in the car and he's driving her to Lifford and then heads back to Derry. Is that a far distance?
It wouldn't be. It's about 25 miles, maybe.
But is she alive at this point?
Oh, she is. This
is prior to the assault.
The night before, they had been at a horse show in Lurgan on the Sunday. And this journey they crossed the border into Lifford and then they drove back in the day. That all happened the night before.
Right.
Katie was murdered, and that they arrived home to the house in Shandoni, got Nessie Meadows at around just short after midnight that night, the Sunday night and the Monday morning. She had come home with Creswell, and one of the defendants today, Rose, the Montmorency Wright, was actually also living in the house, and she gave evidence of speaking to Katie and Creswell when they came home that night. And then she got up in the morning, brought them a cup of tea, and then she went to work. And it was later on that morning that she got a call to say that Katie had committed suicide. So there's just that much detail in it. There's not much, but that's the basic sequence of events in terms of the night before. As you say, it was all related to this discovery that Katie was in a new relationship.
But obviously, I mean, he must have flown into a rage at some point with her during that night. Sorry, the following morning, rather. This is now. We're on to the following morning then. Yeah.
Well, the day before, again, it came out in court today that Creswell admitted to one of the three defendants that he had given Katie a hiding the day before, which was the Sunday. So that was where quite a lot of the injuries that was found in her body appear to come from. That assault obviously happened in that time between when they left the horse show. Katie was in the vehicle with him, and they arrived back at the house after midnight. So they would suggest assaulted her then. He told one of the women that he had given Katie a hiding. And again, this plays under what they had covered up in terms of she was aware of that assault having taken place, but didn't tell police when interviewed, in relation to Katie's apparent suicide.
So they did a number of things, and they each have different pleas in. But basically, Hayley Robb, she is the one that he sort of phones when he goes in to discover what he says is Katie's body hanging, and that he sort of screams down the phone to her as he makes this discovery, tells her to ring an ambulance, which she does. She rings an ambulance, and then he takes off with the body in his car and is ordered to pull in on the side of the road by the ambulance service. He's supposed to be giving CPR, and I think at an earlier court hearing it was heard that instead of doing that, he started deleting texts he had made to Katie's phone.
And the fact that he called her and kept her on the phone as he entered the house, which
is making her part of his alibi.
Totally,
isn't it?
That's exactly what it was, and I know it's easy now thinking, but he's on the phone as he arrives in the house and then makes this shock discovery, as he claims, of Katie's body hanging from the banister, and then tells Hayley Robb to phone an ambulance, which he does.
And she makes her way to the house then as well, doesn't she?
She goes to the house, yeah.
And he eventually tells her that he's assaulted Katie before.
Yeah.
And he asks her to take his clothes and to wash them because he has a shower before he goes to the hospital, a cold shower, he says.
No, well, he goes to the hospital, and then with Katie.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to the house with Hayley Robb, asks her to clean up blood from the banister, takes a cold shower, which the prosecution obviously say was to show that, I'm not aware of how, but if you take a cold shower, it doesn't look as if you've had a shower in terms of, you know, the steam or whatever. So he deliberately takes a cold shower, says to Hayley Robb that it describes that it tells her that he's taking a cold shower because, so police wouldn't know he had taken a shower. He asked her to clean up blood from the banister, and then he also asked her to take his clothes to get them washed. She goes to Jill Robinson's home.
The second accused.
Yeah, and they tells her, now, forgot to mention that when Creswell gives the clothes to Hayley Robb, he tells her not to breathe a word of it.
Yeah.
Which again, you know, but would obviously arouse suspicion. Hayley Robb takes the clothes to Jill Robinson's home in Boma and tells her that she has been told by Creswell to get these clothes washed. So the two women then travel to a small village in Tyrone, Fontana, which has a one of these outdoor
wash machine
things, and the clothes. Jill Robinson, according to the evidence, Hayley Robb stays in the car. Jill Robinson washes the clothes, this laundrette place, and then when they're washed, she takes them to Creswell's mother's home in Greysteel, just outside Derry.
Now, the accusations against Rose de Montmorency Wright are a little bit more complex, aren't they? Because she sort of, in her statements to police, made certain comments in relation to Katie Simpson. She said to them that she believed that Katie had tried to kill herself on a previous occasion. I think the court heard there was no evidence of that. And she also gave evidence that she had seen her fall off a horse, which was basically, I think, what Creswell told the hospital was why she was injured. Something to do with an accident on a
the day
horse.
Before, she had fallen, trampled on by a horse, and that's what he was claiming.
That's what he was claiming, but I mean, Rose gives a bit of backup when she tells the investigators that she said that she saw her fall off the horse, that there was a video and that the video had been deleted from a phone. There was no clarity around that really in the sentencing. I'm sure there's obviously a lot more than what we heard has been given to the judge in relation to this, but both Rose and Jill Robinson, so both Rose de Montmorency Wright and Jill Robinson, in their statements to police, both said they were not afraid of him, of Creswell, and that they, he had no controlling relationship with them at all. Now, their senior counsels today have said they only said that because they were afraid of him.
And they argue that this was a perfect example of the control he had over them, that they were actually in police interviews being accused or in question in connection with serious crimes, but they remained so frightened of him that they weren't willing to give him in, for want of a better term, that even when police questioned him and said, we have evidence that Creswell has assaulted you in the past, what do you say to that? They were denying it. So that, as you say, the barristers are saying
they were protecting him.
That's how much control he had over them.
So, of course, we have to remember that this sentence hearing has happened literally just weeks after, the case was just so extraordinary. Anyway, the trial had begun, but Creswell was discovered dead in the bail house that he was staying in. And actually, that was at the beginning of the case today. The judge took evidence in relation to that matter. And as such, did he close the murder case?
I think the official process is that he needs evidence to confirm the death of the defendant. And we had a police officer give evidence to the court. And it was actually came out that the judge asked, when the police officer went to the house and found there was a couple of people there, obviously it raised the alarm, and the police officer arrived at the house, was able to identify Creswell, and she said that was because before she joined the police force, she was a prison officer, and she had dealings with Creswell previously, when he was in McGabry prison, he was jailed for previous assault on a previous partner, and he had done time in McGabry prison. So this police officer who was called at the scene of his death recognised him and confirmed that. So when that evidence was brought before the court, the judge then discontinued the murder investigation, which is like
and lifted all reporting restrictions.
There had been
some other
various reporting restrictions in relation to the case, and those were all lifted as a result of the case being discontinued.
Like, it's ironic there today to see those three women, and the eldest of whom was Jill Robinson, 42, and reference was made to her being older than the others on the basis that, there's so much shame attached to being involved in this at all. It just struck me she's the only one older than him. She would have been in relationship with him a number of years ago, the court heard. He would have been, 10 years younger than her? In around.
Round about. Aye. And what Creswell was he 35? He died. So there was a significant age difference. Yeah.
The other two girls, we were told that in particular when it was Rose de Montmorency Wright, that the court was told that she was only 19 when these offences occurred. And she does look particularly young and sort of wide-eyed or something. There's some sort of a naivety to her.
She definitely, the certainly was, and you could see almost like a fear in her eyes, of sitting in a courtroom, a packed courtroom, in a case like this. I think all three women looked, not surprisingly, shook and nervous, but particularly Rose, because, as you say, she looks so young.
She does.
She's
but
only,
they're left to
23 now.
face the music, aren't they? As such it's just ironic that this guy, who really the details of what he has done and the control he's had over women, there was a hint there today from papers and from names not disclosed to the court that there has been other complaints made in relation to what he did to women, and there seem to be a whole host of other victims out there, possible victims that we don't know much about yet. But he's gone. He has done as many abusers have before. He's taken the control of his own ending. He doesn't want to be standing there in court hearing this evidence, facing this. So these three women who were so adoring of him and did everything and anything for him are left to face the music alone.
And it comes out today that these three women, by admitting these offences fairly, obviously there was the situation where Katie had died, and then there was a large gap before the police investigation was launched. But once these three women had been questioned, and it seems that, again, it's something that their barristers are arguing, that they fairly early guilty pleas, and it was outlined in court that all three women were going to be key prosecution witnesses in the case against Creswell. So they were going to stand up in the trial and give evidence that was going to put him down for all intents and purposes. So if that trial had played out as was planned, Creswell would have been, these three women would have had a massive role in convicting him. And the public focus on them would have maybe been so much different as it is now. But as you say, he's dead. Yeah. He's took the easy way out. He's, the coward's way out, some people would say. A lot of people would say that. And these three women have been left to face the public, in many ways, the public backlash in this because it's been such a horrific and unusual case. Like, there was TV crews there today that are talking about doing documentaries.
Yeah, there's a lot of
national,
interest,
international. It's
and I think in a way, there's just so much more to this story than what has come out. I think there's, huge questions to be asked about those, who worked within the equestrian industry. Did anybody know anything? Or was this guy he seemed to be going around beating up women, bullying them, coercively controlling them essentially from a very young age, very young teenagers. So who saw or who saw nothing?
I think it's already been established that, well, maybe not everyone, but it was well known within the equestrian circles what type of character he was. He'd been jailed, for attacking a previous partner, when he got out of jail, there was a party, a welcome home party held for him, within that equestrian circles and his friends who obviously stood by him despite what he had been convicted of. And among those were people who potentially knew about how he was treating women. It seems clear that there was women there who were being treated terribly by him,
and
violently
they were
and
openly
coercively.
talking about that between them. I mean, they're openly talking about that. There's a very peculiar setup in the house that he's in the bed with Katie, who of course is the younger sister of his partner, Christina. And everyone seems to be floating in and out of relationships with him, if you can call them that. I mean, it does remain to be seen if they were...
The 3 women that are in court today, we know they were all in relationships with him. So that's only 3. But it would seem fairly clear that given that they had hinted at a lot more information that hasn't come out, and obviously would have come out during his trial, that there was a lot more woman, either in his world at the time of Katie's death or whatever, or previously.
Yeah.
It just seems he's left a trail of misery and destruction in that equestrian world.
Do you know what I thought was interesting, although it's hard to listen to, is the little detail from the pathologist who examined Katie's body, and this suggestion that she had been whipped, basically. Isn't that what they were saying? It was like they felt it was a strap or something.
It was like a strap or some sort of hard rod, kind of, maybe one of those rods you would use in horse training, and that, I think he admitted to one of the defendants in court today that he had hit Katie with the rod. Again, that was part of that, his cover-up in terms of, Katie had suffered injuries that were clearly going to raise suspicion or questions, around her death on her body, apart from what he claimed were injuries linked to her attempted suicide. But so he was, again, it's that picture, he was building up this story and getting people involved in this web of deceit that he had created and was pushing. So that was, and all that he had hit her, and the story about her falling off the horse the day before and getting trampled on by the horse. So this all plays under that deception and creating that doubt. If police had we know that the police investigation was a bit of a farce at the beginning.
Police accepted at the beginning that it was a suicide, and he was. I was really surprised when I started looking into the story, but somebody had said to me that he was basically chief mourner at her funeral, at Katie's funeral, and he was the one that people were commiserating with. I mean, he nearly got away with murder.
Very, very closely got away. Again, it was said today, there was, just on the day, I think when Katie was in hospital, he went to him and his partner, Katie's sister, and 2 of the defendants today ended up in a car in a lay-by in Derry at the Foyle Bridge, and they discussed, obviously, the situation with Katie, and at one stage Creswell turns around and says, "You all think I did it?" But then they all sort of comfort him, saying, "No, we know you doted on Katie." So even within that, those other hours after Katie's lying in hospital, critically ill, from what has been claimed as an apparent attempted suicide. So even then, it shows that control, that self-pity, that he used to control that whole circle of women around him, that there's very little mention of men. The only man really involved in the story is Shane McCluskey, who we're told had started a new relationship with Katie. So here was a case of this man coming under this circle of women that Creswell had around him, and he clearly didn't like that, and that's what we now know
was the cause
of threw him into this rage. So it's such
it's a fascinating story. I mean, the fact that murder trial is essentially being parked there today will allow the inquest into Katie Simpson's death go ahead. So, further pieces of the jigsaw might come out of that, and presumably Creswell's inquest will also be going ahead. There's no foul play as such regarding that.
There's talk that there was a note left. He left a note, so I don't know if that information will come out publicly, but obviously if it did, it potentially could shed some light on the story. But again, that's coming from Creswell, so who knows that, you couldn't trust.
This city's going to be crawling with journalists for a while, as everything is that there was there today. You had Sky, you had, BBC, ourselves, there's loads of people interested in this, and there's just so many more angles to just so much more of it to unfold. But for the moment, anyway, the sentencing is on the 14th of June. And they were told that they were being released, the three girls were being released on bail, continuing bail, but not to see that as reflective of what sentence he's going to hand them down. Judge seems to be very thorough. He's going to go through the three cases, the three charges. He said he's an awful lot to read. He had intended doing the sentencing earlier that week, but he feels that he needs the time to read. And I think he is going to be very focused on, given that he was the one who brought it up, that sort of whole idea of coercive control. I think he probably wants to make a very reasoned, and he wants to explain his sentence.
Like, we're sitting here now on the 31st of May, the sentences, so it's not a couple of weeks before the sentencing, but it's going to be very interesting to see, because it was said in court today, and I think it is accepted by all the defence teams that those offences have crossed the custody threshold, which normally when you're reporting on a court case means you're going to jail.
Yeah.
But the defence arguments, the defence teams all put forward the arguments of their clients. These women are in court because of the control that Creswell had over them, and they all stress that these three women are victims of Creswell as well. So that's
such a strange position. They've pleaded guilty to these criminal offences, and yet they are victims. Yeah, essentially.
So that is what the judge has to weigh up now. We could sit here and say, of course, the custody threshold, they're going to jail. But it's in my experience of covering the courts, this is such an unusual case, and this is not a given. Obviously, we're not predicting what the court will decide, the judge will decide, but the fact that their barristers have argued and stressed, and it's accepted, I think, by all sides, that Creswell was an evil character, and these women were victims, as Katie was, clearly. So it will be interesting to see what impact that has on the judge's sentencing decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, for the moment, we shall leave it at that. Thank you, Ciaran.
Thank you.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.